All right, and welcome to patch 14.9. My name is Chris. My usual patch review partner, Jason, is not here this time, but I am overjoyed to have two of my favorite people doing the patch with me today. First off is my friend Joey.
Hello.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and when you started playing?
Yeah, I've been playing for about 10 years now. I think I started a little before 2014. I'm just a casual gamer, nothing competitive. It's just something I do in my leisure time. But yeah,
That's
I
cool.
started. Yep.
We've had like a wide assortment of players doing this. We've had some big time ranked grinders and some very casual people, some ARAM only people. So I like to get people of all walks of league in the game. Do
Yeah,
you do you
I'm
remember
a
what
I'm a little.
champion? I'm sorry. Do you remember
I,
what champion came out when you started playing?
the last thing I remember is I started playing a little before Vel'Koz was released.
Yeah, that seems like season 4 or 5. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah. I was playing a little bit before that. I'm sure a few characters came out before that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But it's hard to remember your life so far back. It's like you use
I
incidents
hear you.
and
And I'd also like to say
experience.
this is the brother of my very first co host, Johnny, who did episodes 1 through 3 with me back in May of 22.
Oh wow, you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, just this is almost 2 years now. And then also joining me is my other friend, Jade.
Hi guys.
So, how
Um,
did you
I'm
get in on this crazy ass game?
so Joey is my boyfriend, and in order to have something to do together, I decided to learn the game as well. I'm also a very casual player. Prior to doing normals in like the last year or two, I exclusively played ARAM or any of the event type special
EFT.
Earth type game. So yeah,
Now, I'm sure what
that's
everyone wants to know from you is was it worth it?
yeah. I don't know. It takes a lot of time, but it is fun to play with everybody.
League's one of those games that's like equally frustrating as it is fun.
I don't know if it's dead 50-50, but you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, let's move on to the meat and potatoes, the champion changes. All right, we don't talk about the bug fixes unless something jumps out as like ridiculously funny or just damning and stuff. And a lot of times we do talk about these new systems they added to the games, like these behavioral systems or DirectX support and weird stuff like that. But we're just going to go right into the champion changes this time. First up, we've got Ari. I've said a million times in recent videos or in the past that I think Ari is one of the most balanced champions in the game. Right here we have a nerf to her W, which I always thought is kind of an underpowered portion of her kit. And then we have a cooldown nerf on her ultimate, which usually does have a lot of uptime. So I do think that's kind of a signature part of her kit, that her ultimate is really low, especially since her small rework where it can go off at least 5 or 6 times now. And what
Yeah,
do
I
you
don't
think,
really
Joey?
I don't really feel like she deserved a nerf, especially on her W, which is slightly underpowered. Um, but the cooldowns on her ult getting nerfed in the late game is probably going to make a bigger impact in the team fights. She's kind of one of those carries that's in and out, so I guess you could work around it. But very undeserving nerf in my opinion.
And that brings us to our resident Ari Pro player.
Far from, but I didn't. I don't feel like. Mm, I guess when I play against other RE players, I get a lot of damage, or I take a lot of damage from her W, and I go down pretty quickly, especially since if you hit it, it just automatically comes to you if they're good. I guess.
That's true.
You
Well,
know?
it's
And I
been
think,
yes, you're right. It's coded to automatically lock onto the last thing she auto attacks.
yeah. So I guess I wouldn't know until I actually play it and see if I feel a difference. But I didn't think
Now, what's your
W was.
rationalization behind maxing this first?
Um,
I'm not
I
making
think
fun of
for
you. I'd like to know your take on
Oh,
I
doesn't have
think
the
for
skill shot, bro.
yeah, that's true. That's very true.
it. I mean, that's an argument. They've been moving a lot for like the last 10 years. They've been moving farther and farther away from lock-on abilities.
Yeah, I feel like I mess up her Q a lot. So the W just gives me more of a 1-2-1 like toe to toe in lane, especially early game. So I tend to max that out first.
I hadn't
Makes
really
it
thought
work.
about that because you kind of set up the Q with the charm, and most
Yep.
people in the higher ups they tend to only use her W to like secure last hitting because it does bonus damage against like minions that are low on health and stuff.
And they nerfed that as well, right?
It,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yep. Yeah. So I may
Only
not
10.
play.
That's not bad.
I actually haven't been playing her a lot. I feel like playing against tanks really she falls off late
Oh
game.
yeah, she's definitely bad against
Mhm.
tanks. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so that's
And
kind
then
of
she
why.
has true damage. This doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, her damage just isn't really consistent enough. She's more of an assassin, if anything, in this day and age.
Yep. But
Alright, next let's move on to action. I've dumped on this champion a lot in the past, and I still think he's painfully mediocre, but let's get into some of these changes. First up, his Q, his boomerang. We got less bonus movement speed and less wave clear. It is a really annoying wave clear because if it just hits you once, it goes throughout the entire wave. And then we have a ridiculous nerf on his ultimate, which is already kind of a laughable version of Caitlyn's ultimate, in my opinion at least. Has less bonus damage the less a target's hurt, but it has a higher health ratio base numbers. And if you've ever seen this in the game, you know it does almost no damage if someone's like even halfway alive.
Yeah. I don't really play Akshan that much. I think I've played him like just a couple of times, but most of his damage doesn't really come from his ult. It's like his passive and his other moves. Um, I don't know if this nerf is really deserving since he's already kind of trash. I mean, but he can carry mid to late game, right? So I don't think it's gonna affect it as hard as some people think. It doesn't even look like the nerfs are that much.
All
So
right.
I don't know. It's not like I'd pick him up or anything, especially now that he's been nerfed.
I agree. I do think he's kind of underpowered. I don't really think he carries anywhere near as hard as most of the AD carries tend to.
Yeah, there's plenty of better options, but his passive is what makes him really really good. So as long as they don't do anything to that.
I know he's like a very niche champion. Do you have anything to add to that, Jade?
I think I've only seen this champion played in Earth or ARAM, and that's it.
That's pretty much the only place someone would risk picking him.
Yeah.
And ARAM is pretty his passive is pretty busted. I won't lie.
Yeah, in fives though, he tends to really only be played like top as kind of like a troll pick, and for some reason no one even wants to risk playing him as AD carry. I guess he just sucks.
Yeah, I've
I
seen
think
more
just
people go mid than AD.
I think he's just he is pretty much a troll champ because I remember Jerry and I played a bot game and the Akshan just went to base and was just like
And he
circling
was like,
around in the enemy base, killing
yeah, he
all
was
the
like
minions.
spinning on one of the little platforms, in a circle, killing the minion waves.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's a lot like Quinn, I think.
Yeah.
Just kind of a goofy play style.
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
All right, next up we've got Alistair, and I'm not going to talk about every one of these changes, but in this patch, they cleaned up a lot of the larger champions' hitboxes to more closely resemble their actual model size. So from this patch onward, a lot of the, not just the larger champions, but a lot of champions in general were soloed out in this patch to have their model to be much more closely similar to their hitbox when it comes to skill shots and stuff. So all this stuff about collision and gameplay and selection radius and all that stuff is all in regard to making things feel more closely aligned with their model.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means. Selection radius reduced? That so what, it's easier to click his W on someone?
Actually, it's 5 units harder to click on him than it was.
Oh, well that sucks.
But he's already kind of bigger, so you probably won't notice.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's I play a little bit of Alistar, and it's already kind of hard to do the WQ if you're not in range, so that might.
It won't affect the person playing Alistar, it only affect his allies and people playing against Alistar.
Oh, okay, then that's good, right?
I guess it's a
Not very.
microscopic buff if you're playing Alistar.
Hey, yeah, yeah, there you go. That's what I'm talking about, bro.
Yeah. Alright, I don't really tend to go over a ton of these super small changes, so Amumu getting 4 extra attack damage. It's actually kind of a lot for a base amount. Which is just,
SOP for jungling.
yeah, you're right. It's a lot for a level 1, that's for sure. Alright, next up we've got Aurelion Sol, who's received a change almost every patch since he's been reworked. Most people still... My friend seems to think this champion is like the most broken thing in the entire game. I tend to actually err on the side that his laning phase is still so horrendously bad that I think he's actually really balanced because it takes him a long time to get to his like raid boss status.
Yeah,
So
the scaling is like ridiculous with this champion, though, man.
you're right, but things like Viger have been in the game since like the Stone Age.
Oh, that's definitely a counter pick, but I really don't see that many Vagar players going mid or anything like that anymore.
True. My argument for his like insane power in the late game is just how bad his laning phase is. So champions like Azir, like Kassadin, or don't really bother me as much. Or Rise when people complain about how powerful they are.
Yeah, well, if you could dominate him early game, of course, any champion's gonna be bad late game.
Alright.
What's the tick AP ratio per tick? Are they talking about the E?
No, this is his W, the one where he drops down the black hole, and the longer you stand in it, the more stacks he gets.
Oh, right. Okay,
Yes, I
sorry. Yeah,
hate that
I
thing.
confused those. That's what I meant.
Yeah, and if anything dies in it, he gets permanent stacks also. And it also executes you when you're at a certain health threshold.
Okay, so that's a big nerf, and I think that it's deserving because of how well he scales.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been nerfed a million times.
20% though.
This was
Yikes.
150% when he first came out.
Oh, no joke. So they took it down almost half, huh?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been nerfed many times.
Oh, more than
I
half.
like
Good.
I like it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't really.
I'm kind of biased, bro. I don't like playing against Aurelion.
I don't like playing against him either.
Yeah, he is monstrous when he keeps going, but
Yeah.
I like him, and I'm so happy with the rework compared to what he used to be. Oh man,
Yeah.
when we did the rework or we talked about his rework during that episode, I gave it like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 as one of the best reworks they ever did because
I don't even
compared to
know.
what he
I don't
was,
even remember what he did.
that's the
He had
problem.
the little stupid things that like spun around him, and then when you reactivate it, they like spread farther. And you have to like
Oh,
move
right,
to keep
right.
hit. It was awful. It was awful.
It was
Yeah.
so
I'm
Okay.
glad.
Okay.
gimmicky and
I
it was
remember.
so slow. His damage was pathetic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He was trash.
All right, so you guys are a fan of this nerf?
Uh, well, yes, but I'm
Yes.
100% sure that anyone that mains Aurelion or plays him constantly will hate it. Of
Yeah.
course, like I said, it's a biased opinion. I don't play Aurelion.
I think it's
He's
biased if
yeah.
you play against
This
it.
is a place where he could actually stand being nerfed as long as they don't touch the percentage damage on his Q or how many stacks he gets from things dying in his W. He's still going to scale incredibly well.
Right,
The
right.
damage over time effect on his W isn't really the point of his scaling. If they touched his passive though, then he'd really be in trouble.
Yeah.
All right, next up, let's move on to Bel'Veth. This is actually a champion I've picked up in the last 2 years. I've kind of become a bit of a fan of. First up, her passive now doesn't cap out at level 13. Now you have to get almost to the level cap to get what you were already getting before. So in that regard, it's kind of a nerf. She's not going to get as much out of the jungle camps as soon as she was previously. And now the base damage on her Q is going down and doesn't do bonus damage to monsters. Well, this doesn't scale, it just says flat now. So this is kind of just a bunch of jungling changes for her.
Yeah, that's gonna really affect the jungling, and that's pretty much all she does.
Yeah, I tried
Wow.
to play her top when she first came out, but it was a bit of a bust.
So, so it's 4 additional levels of scaling?
Basically, just think that she got 1% attack speed per stack at level 13. Now she has to get another 4 levels to get the same effect, so her power spike is basically stalled out till later in the game.
I see. Well, she was pretty much really late game anyways. Um, Probably won't affect it as much as the AD ratio reduction. But I mean, that's only 10% too. So
True, and
I really just think it's the damage to minions.
it's only damage to monsters, and the flat
Right,
damage
right.
that they added will be stronger in the early game. The scaling isn't as strong in the early game.
Uh, yeah, I mean 140% in the late game, you know. It kind of helps carry you through the mid to the late. But yeah, you're right. It'll help for the to get to level 6 quicker.
What do you think, Jade?
I don't think I play enough against her to have a big opinion on it. I think I've only played her also in ARAM. And she's pretty fun, but I wouldn't know how she does in the jungle. I do know that when I did play, or when there was one on the enemy team, she did come to lane pretty quickly to gank, so
Yeah, that should slow her down. Take that,
yeah.
Belveth. Sorry, Chris.
No, that's fine. She's extremely underwhelming in the early game. Kind of like Master Yi.
Where's all my champions buffs at? That's what I want to know.
Alright, next up we've got Blitzcrank. Finally getting a nerf to his passive. This is kind of a thing that's been unchanged for 15 years. The fact that his passive lasted for 10 seconds. Someone finally caught on and reduced it a shitload down to 4 seconds to be more in line with most of the shields in the game that don't last very long. Most of the shields in the game only last like 1.5 to like 3 seconds. Even Shen's only lasts for like 4 or 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like this kind of thing. I think it's kind of something that made an ancient ass champion kind of special.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's really gonna. I guess it'll make a little bit of difference, but that shield's either gonna get eaten in that amount of time or it's not. You know, it'll still give you enough time to ult and do everything you need to do. I think the overdrive nerf wasn't necessary.
You think
It's
he's too
already
fast?
well. I mean, you could put in that argument, but it slows them afterwards, and you need that speed boost to go in and get your grab off most of the time. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get your grabs off if you're not in line with the champs.
Well, you've played a lot of AD carry in the last couple of years. Do you think he's too fast?
Yeah. I mean, most of the time, people don't even run up and grab; they just run up and punch you. It's- yeah. I guess now that you mentioned that, maybe it is needed a little bit.
Is it harder to play
Uh,
Fizz against?
no, no way. I'll jump out either way. I mean, you could just dodge it. You know? Now, characters like Zaya, they're not going to really worry about it either because they have the ult for the getaway. Um, but I'd see Jinx worrying about it and stuff like that.
And what about you, Jade? Do you play support against Blitzcrank or
She
anything?
used to play Blitz.
Yeah. I haven't played port for a long time, and when I do, I just get messed up anyway. Um,
That's okay.
um, but yeah, I think I'm trying to remember when I played Blitz last. It's been a while, but I think playing against a Blitz is pretty good. I do feel like he gets away more often than not, and it's kind of annoying. So the movement speed reduced is probably a nice little thing for if they do choose a Blitzcrank on the enemy team.
Yeah, sometimes I do catch them running off with their shield.
Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah, and then
it
you get
good
like
then.
kind of upset.
It
Live
good
with
then.
12 health.
Yeah.
All right. Too bad you weren't here like the last 3 or 4 patches. There was a million fucking changes to Briar that you could have talked about.
Oh yeah, I love that champ, man.
She's been
I just
nerfed
played
like
her
every
earlier.
single patch since she's come out.
Yep, I would too.
All right, let's go all the way down to Evelyn here. And we
Uh,
have a bigger slow on her charm. Or I know, a weaker slow on her charm, and then a giant nerf on her ultimate, which always had an insane scaling. My personal opinion is that Evelyn has secretly been one of the most like insane burst mages or burst assassins in the game ever since she was reworked. I think she has such incredible overkill potential with like her entire kit that I honestly think it's kind of silly her kit has been as strong as long as it has been.
yeah, I agree. As far as the assassin part of her goes, I always catch myself not liking to play against jungling Evelyns, or even sometimes I catch him in mid lane. Now I do play a little bit of Evelyn myself, and I don't really agree with the slow reduce on the charm. A lot of people know how to use that a lot, but it actually takes a little bit of skill to be able to get that off. So I think that the slow reduction is helpful in securing the kills with the Q. Now, I mean, her ult, of course, it's overpowered. Um, so that's a little bit justified. I don't think that it's gonna knock her down a few tiers just from 10% AP. It's just too strong, like you said. She's a mid late game champ. She could even scale good early if you do it right.
Well, it's 10% if they're like at full health. The execution threshold is the much larger AP ratio.
Yeah, again though, 24%, when you make it to late game and you got 600 AP, I really don't think it's going to be a game-changing nerf. It'll probably just put her more in line with most of the other champs and their scalings.
Hmm. Well, we'll have to agree to disagree.
Oh, we could see, man. I'll go Evelyn next time we play a game together.
Uh oh.
I'll show you. I'll get beat up.
What's your take on this, Jade? Too strong or too weak?
I agree with Joey. Especially with the slow reduced. It is from my experience of playing her, it is at least for me, it's hard to hit that charm. So I'm sad that they reduced it. But her ult is broke. Especially if Evelyn just completely dominates early game. It's so hard to win a game when she's buffed.
I also want to add in that a lot of times Evelyns are using their ult as an escape tool more than an execution. It just depends on the gank and everything. So
It's very useful in that way. I think that's like the right way to use it a lot of the time.
exactly. So I mean, having a higher AP is just kind of broken. Like I'm gonna run away and get a kill. That's kind of
Yeah, that's a really interesting design that they did it that way.
yeah.
I can't
I'm gonna
think of.
steal Baron and then escape.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and she just like blinks over terrain, also.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely
Unless
very.
you're
Kill a
me,
dragon
not
and get away.
It's a very interesting ability for sure.
Oh, your guys is champ next, huh?
All right, next up we've got. This is Janna is next.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna do Fiora.
Oh,
Sorry.
well, it's kind of a minor effect. I don't really talk about the. This is
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of just a gameplay functionality thing.
Skip it, man. Sorry. I'm not paying attention.
I would love to talk about her. She's one of my favorite champions that I've picked up the last like 3 years. Maybe next time though. All right, next up is Janna, and this actually is my most played support over like probably the whole time I've played League.
No joke. I thought it was Shen.
What? I don't really play him.
No,
I don't
I
play
know,
him bot like Johnny has played him bot a lot. I've tried it a
I'm
bunch.
just kidding.
I just don't think it's very good. I've tried
Yeah,
to make
yeah.
it work a few times. Alright, first up we've got a nerf to Zephyr. I actually think this is a good thing because there is this degenerate subsect of support players who will play all of the enchanters as if they're Brand or Morgana or Xerath support, and those people tend to just be about the scum of the earth. Because you'll always see them playing like Soraka, Nami, Lulu, Janna, and they'll be running like Electrocute and Comet, like it's Zyra or something. And these are just the worst people. And what they'll do is the Zephyr Max or the Equinox Max if it's like Soraka or something. Now they have like nerfed these strategies several times since it became popular like 4 or 5 years ago. But that still doesn't stop people from trying. But in this one, we actually have a huge disincentive to do that, where they nerf the damage on Zephyr, which I like because it should just be like a really powerful slow. So the damage has always been pathetic going back to like season 1 or before season 1. But we got a small buff on the shield, which is a very powerful ability as it also gives attack damage.
Yeah, I play a little bit of Janna. I mean, the damage was already trash, and don't hate me, Chris, but I have done a
Me
max
too.
a maxing of Zephyr first just to see how it played
Oh,
out.
pardon my
You know,
French.
it reminds me of the old school fiddles before they patched them. I used to max
Oh,
out
Dark
the
Wind.
crow.
Dark Wind.
Yeah, exactly,
He
bro.
was a Dark Wind bouncy boy. Oh, man.
It still
I did
makes
that
her
too.
it still makes her okay in the early game. The base damage reduction isn't that much for the first 3 levels, but yeah, affecting the late game when it's not that important in my opinion is still okay. Not much of a nerf, man. Uh, the AP reduction sucks because the damage is already kind of low. But at least she got a shield buff, so
I think this will just make her a better support champion for
better.
the DC. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if 20 shield damage late game on the old is going to make her better, but
Yeah, it would have been a lot nicer if it was like 10 or 20 more at level 1.
Yeah.
if anything, she's not much worse. I'd say.
Well, as a side note, of all the champions that were in the game, like several years ago, how did you guys choose this one as the name for one of your cats?
Uh,
That was
okay,
me.
so we have two cats, man, and
Mm-hmm.
a boy and a girl, and one is Talon and one is Jonna. Now, when I got Talon, he was a stray, and I didn't know if he was a boy or a girl. The name was supposed to be Katarina because it was the champion that I mained at the time. I found out he was a boy, and that was a little bit of when I was kind of getting into playing Talon. So I ended up naming him Talon, which is kind of a cool name for a cat, because the talons are like claws. Um, but anyways, we got another cat later on, and I think Jade was playing a lot of Jana at the time,
Mm.
so that's what happened with that one. Just our
That's
mains at the time. I know, kind of weird.
no, that's cute. Okay, next up we've got Jinx, and this is a pretty cancerous change to the cooldown in her ultimate, which already has some very, very cheeselord implications in I bet just about every game mode where people try to run like Ultimate Hunter and a lot of ability haste, and you can get her ultimate down to like 15 seconds. I'm sure you guys have seen this in at least some ARAMs, right?
Oh yeah.
Uh,
I used to main Jinx, so I really think that this nerf is deserving as much as I don't like it. But my only thing that I like about it is that it doesn't affect the late game that much.
No,
It's
it's actually a
really,
buff in the late game to preserve the silliness.
yeah, which makes sense because Jinx is kind of a scaling champion, so um, that's good that they kind of made her go weak early into stronger late game with that. I like it as far as nerfs go.
I like that I don't have to get hit by it.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
often as I do.
you don't got to worry about her until mid
Yeah.
game.
Yep.
Yeah, of all the 80 carries that have like a similar like big shoot the ultimate out like Ashe, Ezreal, Draven, Graves, Lucian, Misfortune, I can't think of any of them that have even remotely as low cooldown as Jinx does on her ultimate.
Yeah, it is absurdly low, especially if you compare it to someone like Misfortune.
Very odd. Okay,
It's
next
it,
up.
it's not even harder to hit either, man. It's
Oh, I
like
know now. If anything's broken, it's the hitbox on her ultimate. It's absolutely ridiculous.
if you
It's
compare
Yes.
that to Ash, it's like, come on, man.
Yeah, I actually think her ultimate is probably the worst hitbox in the game. It can be
Yeah.
like literally a whole Teemo like above or under you, go past you, and then blow up and hit you. It's one of the worst ones in the whole game, if not the worst. Alright, next up, Karma. This is also a champion very near and dear to my heart. The last couple patches, she's gotten a lot of love back after receiving a lot of nerfs over the last couple years after her tenure being picked up like mid in the pro scene. Now she's kind of fallen off a cliff mid, and she's gotten a couple of buffs in the last few patches to compensate. First up, we got a bigger slow on her Q, and remember the AoE on her Q was doubled last season, so that was kind of cool. What I mean by that is when it hits something, the explosion radius is twice as big as it was for like 10 years. They made that a lot bigger last season. And then the effect of her Mantra E, this is her ultimate and then her E, not just the regular E, has way more of all of the enhanced effects, the movement speed, the shielding, and the ratio. And this is a buff on top of this already being buffed in the last patch. And this was like a pathetically small amount prior to only like a couple months ago. Like it was only like 10% of these effects. I know you play this champion a lot, Jade, too. What do you think?
Likes. I like it.
You
Probably
would.
play her more.
I when I play against a really good Karma, I don't like it. I don't like this at all. The queue is already broken. Like the slow, what is it? I don't know if you know, Chris. Does it last 3 seconds?
I don't know, 2.5, 3, yeah, probably.
Yeah, she's so good early game that I really think this buff is unnecessary. 5%, is it going to make that big of a difference? Maybe not, but it could, especially when it comes to bot laners early game. I think that them buffing Defiance is cool because not a lot of people actually use the ult E. Only really good players know how broken it is and how to use it properly. Most people just spam their Q with their ult, right? So, but either way, they're both getting buffed. So, Karma players are probably going to go up a little bit from that,
Yep.
and I don't want to see them.
I'll choose. I'll choose her.
Thank you.
The amount that this champion was like insane when she was first reworked. Her E had like 100% AP ratio, and her Mantra E was like 120. And not only that, but they kept one of the holdovers from her pre-rework, where when she used her Mantra E, it exploded around the primary target and did the same amount of damage to everyone as the shield around the target.
Oh god.
That's
Oh,
something
god.
the pre-rework Karma used to be able to do with her E, and then they got rid of that a couple years after she got reworked in like season 3 or 4 or 5, something like that.
Yeah, can't have her too busted, man.
I know her kit used to be just absolutely absurd. All right, next up we've got Kassadin, who tends to get very few changes over since I've been doing this series. But we've got a 10% AP reduction nerf on his Force Pulse. That is his E that is 1 second slow in a cone in front of him that he has to charge up. It's pathetically bad in the early game, but has monstrous scaling. That tends to be how Kassadin works. All of his abilities have absolutely embarrassing base numbers, but absolutely monstrous scalings, which is why he's an absolute garbage fire in the laning phase and then dumpsters everyone once he finishes like 2 items.
Yeah, I think that he needs this just to help him get through early game to
This is a
get into
nerf.
late.
Nerf.
Oh my god! Why would
I
they
I
do this?
actually agree. I actually agree with this nerf though, because I agree with Chris. The
No,
early
he he,
no
he
the
won't even make it to late game.
no there swear every time I play against a Kassadin, I'm just like, oh, okay, cool, I'm winning my lane, and then like towards mid late game, I'm just getting ran over.
Yeah,
She's
they
right
just
in the
grab a
sense that I
grab a
would
rod.
say of the champions who are really bad in the early game and scale up to monsters, I'd say that Kassadin is probably the fastest of those scalers.
I really only play Cassie in like ARAM and Earth and stuff. I don't play him even in normal fives that much. I have played him a few times though.
Have you played again?
I just don't like the charge up on Force Pulse to begin with. Having to wait. Everybody else has cooldowns on their stuff like normal and his like a charge, right?
Yes, but the upside is while it's kind of awkward in the laning phase and it kind of has an inflatingly long cooldown, when you're in team fights, it often has only like a 2 or 3 second cooldown.
Right, yeah, you can spam it multiple times in team fights. That's why he's a good carry late game. Um, yeah, like I said, I don't think he needs a reduce, man. There's like already not that many Kassadin players. Do they even use him in competitive?
I doubt it because he's just kind of too one dimensional, and people tend to play very multifaceted champions in the pro scene.
Right. So yeah, like I said, I disagree. That's why I was kind of like agreeing when I thought it was a buff. I think he needs a buff, not a nerf. Whatever.
Yeah, I can see that. He's kind of a controversial champion. I'm not actually sure where I stand on him. When I was much younger, he was one of my favorite champions. I kind of stopped playing him randomly, like somewhere in season like 5 or 6.
Well, see, you started really early, so like all the new champs they're creating are like
Oh,
all these
dude, I started so
busted
early.
stuff.
Kassadin was an AD champion when I started playing.
Oh my god, I didn't know that.
Yeah, in the alpha, he was an AD assassin,
Wow.
and
And
his
so was his kit completely different, or was it kind of the same?
he still had Riftwalk as his ultimate, but his W gave him lifesteal when he turned it on, and it was a toggle, kind of like Scion's ancient ass W, where his sword
Ah,
was red when it glows.
yep.
Yeah, he got lifesteal from his W, and it gave him armor pen when he turned his W on.
Wow, that's wild.
And he had some other goofy ass passive that was only in the game for like 6 months. I can't remember what it was, but it was something. Every champion had an absurdly silly passive back then that made no sense. Like for
Yeah, like
instance, like
zillions.
yeah, exactly, like Zillions and Janus, yeah, or something like goofy. Like Evelyn's old passive was she just took half damage from minions. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Even though she's a jungler, huh? All right.
Anyway, we don't have to talk about the early days. Okay, next up. They didn't actually do anything technical with Lee Sin, but he did get like a full makeover in terms of his look and all of his skins and his animations and particle effects on his abilities. I haven't actually seen what the new one looks like yet, but they didn't change any of his abilities.
Just well, it says cripple here.
Well, it kind of changed like the way the physicality of it works. They didn't change like the slow or the damage or anything.
Oh, I got you. I got you.
Technically, what it's saying is you could technically block this with like Yasuo or Braum's wall if you were right in front of it, because it was kind of a super fast projectile. But now they just changed it to where it's actually a true area of effectability.
Oh wow, I didn't even know you could block that before. Well, that's gonna change a lot of leads in competitive.
I don't think anyone made the effort because it was basically instantaneous. Alright, let's see what we got next. Scroll all the way down to Malzahar. I'm always ragging on this champ because I really like this champ and I think he's in a terrible place. And he's been in a terrible place ever since that like season 7 or 8 where the pros were playing him as like support for like 2 or 3 years, and he got nerfed
Mhm.
like 10 patches in a row because he was too good of a support because he had so much power for so just putting points into his buttons, and he was nerfed into the ground after that period, and I don't think he ever really recovered. And he really hasn't had a lot of attention since then. So we got cheaper mana cost early on in the queue, and then a lower cooldown early on his malefic visions, which is kind of his main damaging ability. I'd actually be really happy with this if they just reduced the late game cooldown on his visions even by just 1 second. But leaving it at 7 kind of like removes my hope for the future.
Oh, so when I play Malzahar, and it's funny because I was literally just complaining about how much mana this champ uses. Even though I played him in an ARAM, it'd be like a couple casts and then I'm out of mana. Um, so I really think that that's a good call on the mana reduction for Void. As far as Malefic Visions go, I kind of agree with you on the late game. They didn't even touch it. But having the early reduced is going to help you farm a lot. So that's like a really, really big buff, in my opinion, for mid lane. That's probably the primary thing to use when you're farming, if you do it right. That's what I use anyways.
Have you
You
laned
can
this
pretty much.
champion at all, Jade?
Like twice. And I agree, the mana cost I think is much needed. Um,
You know what would
I
have been
I
an
didn't play
awesome
well.
change? They should have increased the range on Malefic Visions by like another 100, so he can tag people like behind the minion line a little easier. I always
Oh,
rag on
come
like
on.
how bad he is in the laning phase.
I
Yeah,
know.
it
If
is
they're not
really
like,
hard.
yeah, if they're not kissing the minion, it doesn't even hit them for most of the time. But like I said, dude, I use it to clear the wave, and it's really like one of his strongest moves. So I'm happy with the cooldown.
Alright, next up we have the Cancerous Master Yi, And we have less true damage on Wuju style. This is his E that he turns on for a few seconds. And his sword glows and he does on-hit true damage. And now he's doing 10 less at all levels, basically, with that.
Yeah.
I feel like this is kind of the ability that allows him to just chop up tanks even when he's not running like any damage, because you do so many auto attacks, it doesn't really matter if you don't have any base damage. If you're doing that much true damage, he just like chops you up no matter what. This is kind of one of the things that makes him so gay.
Yeah, I think it's needed. He's already a pentakiller, right? But I really don't think it's the nerf that you want, Chris. Most of his damage and his killing is coming from his passive and his Q reset. But that'll slow him down a little bit, right?
Well, this ability also has an AD ratio that's not shown here, so it does scale with like 10 or 15% of his AD or something.
Oh, okay, yeah, that might make a bit of a difference.
I'm embarrassed to say that I actually used to play AP Master Yi when I was younger.
Hey man, tank APE. Don't sleep on him.
And what about you, Jay? Do you think Master Yi is the scourge that he is?
I hate playing against Master Yi.
You hate playing
None of us
against
play.
him?
Yeah, none of us play
Against
him.
him, yeah. I don't play him much. I'm glad that I don't see him a lot. And I hope I don't have to see him.
Yeah, for like 5 years straight, this was like my go-to ban. And then it was like Vayne. And then now it's Nasus. I wish, there's so many champs now, I wish everyone got like 2 or 3 bans, because you'd still have like 100 champs left over, even if everyone got like 2 bans.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
they
feel
could
like it's
probably
time.
fit that in.
It's time.
At least 2. Come on.
So now I'd ban like Shaco and Nasus if I could.
I don't know why you hate that champ so much, man. He's
Dude,
not even that good.
I ban him because I'm protecting myself and I don't want to play him. I don't want to play with him and I don't want to play against him. All he does is just waste your time. He's such a dumbass. And everyone plays him AP no matter how many times they nerf his AP shit. It's just never ending.
I've gotten a few AD junglers. Relax.
He's just such a... oh my god, he's just the embodiment of a troll champion, man.
He's definitely not in competitive, so that says a lot.
That would... yeah. Okay, let's see what's next. We've got some changes to Nilah here, a champion that was totally a flash in the pan when she came out, and I have not really seen her since the first month that she came out in the game, despite the fact that she's like a monster in the late game when she actually gets enough like life-stealing items. She's an absolute terror. Alright, we have a nerf on her Q when she starts a whipping things after she hits the first Q, and then less of a synergy with critical strike on when her Q is active. And then I guess she's also whipping things slower.
Good.
I remember you played this champion several times, Jade, didn't you?
I only play her in Earth.
I was gonna say this is more Johnny and Jade's champ. I've played Nilah one time just to see what she does.
I mean, she's fun. I just don't like playing her in normals.
Oh yeah, I bet she's very difficult probably to play in normal games.
Yeah.
I'd feel awkward actually just playing her like bot.
Yep.
I feel like she'd be easier to play top because at least she can whip people from like range.
Distance, yeah. I think it's hard to go against range champions or range ADCs, which are a lot of them.
You think that nerf will affect her at all?
It's definitely not going to do her any favors because the only reason to play her is because she has so much monstrous synergy with critical strike in the late game. What's not shown here is she also gets like bonus lifesteal from critical strike too, or no, bonus armor pen too, I think.
I just don't like that dodge crap, man.
Oh, it's just a tiny little niche thing, like same thing Fiora or Shen has.
Uh-huh. Makes a big difference to some champs like Fizz, for instance.
Well, you can always bait her, run up to her, and then just sit on your pole and then do the Q instead of queuing
I
right away.
gotcha. I'm talking about the W, man. Stops the reset.
All right, next up we've got Olaf, who they've been trying really hard to give him a bunch of jungle buffs. This is the third patch in a row that his Q has received bonus damage, extra bonus damage to monsters, where for 15 years it did no bonus damage to monsters and he was still a decent jungler. So now he should right about be like killing it in terms of jungle clears, because if he can pick up his axe just throwing it at monsters and basically reduce the cooldown back to like 2 or 3 seconds, and just do that over and over at like level 1, 2, and 3. Which is kind of how he clears things really fast, especially the camps that have multiple monsters, like the wolves, the raptors, and the krugs and stuff. And then we got less resistances on his ultimate. That particularly makes me kind of sad because I'm actually kind of a top Olaf player, where he's kind of like a secretly broken top champion, kind of, sometimes.
I don't think
I've
it's a
seen him
secret.
yeah, I've seen him played top a lot, maybe even more than jungle, man. I really
Yeah,
don't see that many jungle Olafs.
I
Um,
agree.
so I feel like that nerf to his ult is gonna hurt a little bit. I mean, he has the lifesteal and everything, but I feel like he needs that as like a kind of mid game to late game tank if you're playing him well bruiser-ish. I don't really play Olaf or jungle him, so I
Yeah,
don't
he's
really
not
got
really
much
your
to say
speed.
about that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, bro, I don't got 3 seconds to go pick up an axe. I want to do stuff now.
What do you think,
Yeah, I
Jade?
don't I don't have much an opinion on Olaf. I don't see him a lot, and when I do, he's usually top.
Yeah.
Um, and doesn't really move from top whenever I do see him.
It's auto pushes.
Yeah.
Hole breaker.
Oh, yeah. Alright, next we got Pyke. And if you've ever watched any of my previous videos, I'm always talking about how I think Pyke is the most unhealthy champion that they've ever put into the game. He's my number one most toxic champion design because of just how much he gets for so little an investment, and how high his risk, or how high his reward playstyle is for so little risk. So I am overjoyed that they're nerfing the cooldown on his W, which allows him to just master yi his ass away at lightning speed whenever he goes invisible.
Oh yeah, that's
And
the
this is to
invis
say
move,
nothing
right?
about his dash, which is also on a low cooldown.
Yeah, I wish they would have nerfed his stun, but the mana cost increase. Take that. I don't like playing against Pyke. I think he's really busted and overpowered right now. So that's a good change.
I hate Pyke.
I agree with the change. I like it.
He's such a
I
silly
also,
champion.
yeah, I also think they do need to do something about that stun.
Yeah, the fact that he could just walk up and just grab and run out and stun is just
Yeah,
incredible. He can't even take damage most of the time and
it's just
set up
really
someone for a
annoying.
kill.
I
Yeah.
don't really mind the damage he deals. It's how slipper he is and how much he
Yeah,
always gets away so easily that it feels stupid.
hmm
I guess
And then
that's why
come
they
come back
designed
in
him.
with that ult.
Yeah, his ultimate is super fast animation too.
Yep. Very hard to dodge.
Alright, next up, we've got some interesting changes here to Sejuani. This was a champion I used to play a ton of when I was much younger. We've got a huge buff to her passive, which basically just pimps out her already existing armor and MR whenever she hasn't taken damage in a few seconds, and it can become an incredibly silly buff, like even like twice as powerful as like Aftershock in the late game. And then it lingers for a couple seconds, and then she loses the resistances when she takes damage. But for a few seconds, basically she always has Aftershock on permanently. And to boot, you can run Aftershock with her, so it's always been a very powerful passive ability of hers. And now it's getting a 25% buff to armor and MR. So this is really going to keep her high in the jungle against all the monsters do physical damage, of course. So it's always really nice because she doesn't have any sustain. And then her main DPS spell, her W, that she bonks someone on the head, does cone damage, and then she grabs shit, and then it fires in a line and does a lot more damage. It's getting a big health ratio nerf, but they're gutting the base damage on it. And since there's so much higher access to health in the game than there used to be from years ago with things like Heartsteel and the durability update, which gave everyone basically 300 more HP at 18 a couple years ago, it's probably overall going to be a pretty big buff.
Yeah, that's a huge buff, man. Late game's still 12% from 8. This champ is already really ridiculous and tanky. Mainly a jungler, right? I really don't think that 25% buff on that passive is justified. But I mean,
It used to be 100.
everybody has armor pen and magic pen, late game. So maybe it won't be that good. There's a lot of Sejuani players, and they always get really tanky and carry. I don't know. That's a nice buff for Sejuani players. I wish I was one. I know Jade doesn't play much Sejuani.
Definitely don't. Um, I don't think I see a lot. I don't see her played a lot either when we play.
Yeah, I feel like in the modern era, there's a lot more. It's not that there's a lot more selfish people. I think more selfish picks are just more meta right now, so people are more inclined to play like Feast or Famine kind of
Yep.
assassins and carries, even in the jungle. Whereas like 10 years ago, you were almost always going to see kind of a dedicated slob in the top and jungle pick consistently.
Yeah, I agree with this. She's would be really good in team fights. A lot more annoying, I guess.
Yeah, I played her top last year for a little while. I think I probably actually did it with you guys a number of times.
Yeah.
And I can tell you what, that W, it can take out those minion waves super fast. And now it should be extra stupid. She could
Yep.
already like one hit the casters before, basically.
Yep, that wave clear is going to be insane.
Her W also has like a really low cooldown early on. Or I mean in the late game. 12% of her maximum HP. I mean, that's just so silly. I mean, with something like that, it'd be hard not to build Heartsteel, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, Heartsteel into Jock Show or something, right?
Oh yeah. Now that they got rid of mythics, you just get all the shit. You get Heartsteel, you get Jack Shows, you get Warmogs. You buy all the things that used to be mythics, you know?
Wow. That's ridiculous. I bet there will be an increase in Sejuani players too.
All right,
And
next up
her ult just stuns your whole team. It's ridiculous, man.
No, it can only stun the first person hit with the bola. Everyone
Oh,
else just
slow.
gets slowed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it blows up and everyone gets slowed again.
Wow.
All right, next up we've got Seraphine, and this is a buff to her Q, which did get nerfed. This isn't as strong as it has been since her release, and this is particularly a pretty important change for her because a lot of her kind of oomph comes from like her double Q, when her little rap passive bullshit things up where she doubles everything. And this does bonus damage based on your missing life, and it used to be a lot higher than even this. So this is kind of a partial reversion. I think it went up to like 110 when she first came out, and it stayed that way for a long time because they kept nerfing her passive and her W a million times to make up for the good damage that was on her Q and her ultimate.
Yeah, Seraphine's very powerful already. I'm not gonna like this change when I'm playing in game. I mean, she already does incredible damage, especially if she goes into like a carry type of build, which a lot of support players do, or some people even play her as a AD champ down bot with the support. So, yeah, I guess you can buff her even more than she's already buffed.
I think
Definitely
she
not
was,
deserved.
yeah, I think she was fine the way she was.
I kind of think she's like probably the best support that's played the least. Like, I understand why like no one plays like Sona or something like
Yeah,
that, because
but
Sona
she
is like
craps all
so.
over Sona.
I know she does everything exactly what Sona does, but just way better. So does Yumi. They both just are completely make Sona obsolete, essentially. I just don't see a lot of people play Seraphine. I really like her.
Jade
I like
plays
her
her
too.
sometimes.
Yeah, I like her too, but I think she was fine before. I don't think she needed the buff.
Don't lie, you want it.
Just from a
All right,
I
next up,
yeah,
we've got some changes to the new rework Skarner. I
thank
actually
goodness.
haven't had the chance to see the rework Skarner in a game yet, but I have been keeping up with the buffs he received right after he came out. There was a hotfix where they buffed almost everything in his kit, and then in the last patch, they nerfed a few things in his kit. And so now this is another nerf where he's getting less mana, less on hit damage on his Q, and then less base damage when he throws the Q, and then less shielding on his W. Have you guys played against him a lot?
What
Okay,
was
so I haven't played as Skarner, and I actually didn't even know he was reworked until I was like, he ulted like me and somebody else at the same time, and I was like, hold on, what's going on? But yeah, dude, he's been really overpowered. I've played against him in arena, fives, ARAM, etc. And I think that they definitely needed to nerf a few things. I don't know exactly how it's gonna affect him because I haven't played as him. But yeah, I guess I'll see next time I play against him.
so I played him in a one for all.
Where you played 5 Skarners?
Yeah. Before and after his rework. Um and then against him as well, and yeah, I think he needed a nerf. A little more of nerf. So
Compelling. Okay, next up we've got Talia, and this is another champion who does not receive very many changes, but we have a reduction on the damage she does to monsters. It always makes me sad when people jungle her, but she's kind of evolved to the point where no one is really willing to take her anywhere else, so they've kind of embraced the fact that people only jungle her now.
Yeah, I used to see a lot of her mid lane, and she was kind of scary. Um, would she get a mana cost increase? That's cool. What I'd like to see is like a reduction in the range on her Q. But
I feel like
yeah,
if they did that, she'd literally just never be played.
yeah.
yeah. I mean that's pretty much all she's got. But it does make her a really OP champion. Um, I don't play a lot of Talia, so I don't know how the mana is gonna affect her that much. I don't think it's gonna be that crazy though. 10. Do you know her base mana?
No, but I don't really think of her as someone very mana hungry, and she's gotten a slew of buffs over the last couple years. I actually really like the position she's in right now, especially since they got rid of that super goofy, like, worked earth mechanic where she couldn't Q if she was standing on top of, like, a big circle that she'd already queued on top of for, like, a
They
minute.
took that they took that out?
Well, what happens now is if she's standing someplace where she already shot like the 5 rocks out, if she shoots it again, instead she shoots a big boulder out and consumes the worked ground.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
But if
nice.
she's constantly chasing you, she'll never be able to use the boulder. The boulder is only if she stays in the same place.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could always buy mana items, right? So it's not that crazy of a nerf.
I always wish she was more popular, but she was just never my cup of tea. And I like to try to get around to picking up everyone eventually.
I don't like her ult, man. It's not my forte.
Yeah, it feels too awkward to use, like it needs some kind of auxiliary effect to make it more useful. Like maybe if it summons some rock golems to smash people, that would be more useful.
Ivern.
We're always thinking of the most broken stuff.
And it's just so incredibly like niche, like Rise's ultimate,
Yeah.
that it's kind of hard to use competently without looking like a fool.
hmm
Alright, next up, let's go to Twitch. We've got a brilliant and wise AP nerf to his slow on his W. This is the little glass thing that he chucks at people and puts shit on the ground, and it slows you and gives you stacks of his Q, or of his E, I mean. And anything to disincentivize people from building AP on this champion is an absolutely brilliant change, because that has got to be one of the dumbest things I've seen come to like prominence in a long time in this game.
I have seen a lot of AP Twitch players. Is 1% per 100 AP really going to make that much of a difference?
No,
Uh,
because not that long ago
maybe.
they also nerfed the AP ratio on his like passive, which governed how much true damage per stack he was doing, and they also nerfed the AP ratio on his expunge where he detonates it. It was like over 100 or some silly number from some Stone Age ratio from like 2010 or something. And then
Now
someday, yeah, someone just caught on to it, and then suddenly we had AP Twitch.
the spray and pray bonus attack damage reduction is probably going to hurt a little bit.
Yeah, for the legit Twitches out there, this is the actual meaningful change that he's losing base damage on his ultimate.
Yeah, that's kind of. But I mean, it was kind of broken. You sneak up on somebody on the side and they're just dead. So maybe that'll give people a chance to survive if they got flash or whatever.
Yeah, another thing to keep in mind is for almost Twitch's entire existence in League of Legends, his ultimate didn't even give him half of this much AD. It was for like 10 or 12 years, it only gave him like 10 to 20 or something.
Yeah, 70 late game seems kind of ridiculous. It's like a whole item.
What do you think, Jade? Do you have strong feelings about the rat?
Not really. I guess I do get messed up by him though. Mostly because he just sneaks up on me when I'm
Yeah,
not expecting. So
Hate those jungle twitches, man.
I know. I don't know. What were they thinking with invisible junglers? What a cancer. That is. He's probably the most annoying jungler just because he basically just changes the way you have to play.
yep.
Yep.
And you just have to. You might as well just hug your tower until he decides who to level 2 gank because he always level 2 ganks someone. So
Yep.
you might as well. Alright, let's see. Well, looks like that is it for the champion changes. The rest of these are just all of the hitbox things I talked about earlier. Now we're going to scroll down to the item changes. There's not a ton of hugely significant things. First up, we've got Death's Dance, which is getting a little more AD, and then the heal effect is getting a slight buff, but it's absolutely pathetic compared to how much the heal used to give for several years. But now it's slightly less pathetic. Have you guys... I find since they like change the item around a lot, I find that I haven't really bought Death's Dance consistently in a long time.
This is actually one of my go-tos when I play Jungle Vi. I really appreciate the damage increase, so that's good. And the ratio also increased a huge, significant amount. Um, that's really going to help out mid to late game when you start stacking all that AD.
Just so you know, it used to be 250% at one point.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, they they make so many changes in this game. They go one way, then the other. They got to balance everything out and then rebalance it. So, with the recent patch where they took out all the mythics and stuff, I feel like Death's Dance kind of got hit a little hard. So that's good that they buffed it. For me, anyways, that's one of my items I use on a lot of champs.
Yeah, I find I haven't really bought it since they took the Omnivamp off of it that it had for several years. I feel like that was kind of a key stat that made it useful for a much larger group of champs. Have you been buying this every game, Jade?
No. I play mostly mage champions, so
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
yeah, I guess with Fiora I have, and the AD stuff would be nice.
It's good when you're going against Burst, right?
Yeah.
Alright, next up we've got Eclipse. This is one of the former Lethality mythics that is now just a legendary. And this is like the third or fourth time this passive effect has been nerfed. And this is the thing where if you use 2 attacks or 2 abilities, you do a certain percentage of your target's maximum life. And yeah, this has been nerfed many times.
Ouch. Another one of my go-tos when I play Vi or even Briar. Both melee champs, so the 8 to 6 really is impactful. I might look at other options now that nerf hit. I didn't know that. Darn.
I guess now Jerry will not recommend this item to me.
Yeah, there's other things you can do, right? I mean, you could always go for Blade of the Ruin King, get some attack speed as well.
Well, another thing is Eclipse used to have like 10 to 12% lifesteal on it for a couple years, and then several months ago they took that completely off. So that's why Graves and other weirdo champs used to take Eclipse, because it was a sustain item for a long time too.
Yeah, the shield and the max health really made it pretty good for the price. But I don't know, 2% of the max health, that's pretty big change.
Yep, and that effect's on a pretty low cooldown. Alright, next up we've got less MR on Hex Drinker. We'll skip that one, it's not very interesting. Next one that's kind of interesting is this change to Maw of Malmortius, which is a very niche item, but this buff is kind of such that it might kind of be more interesting to pick up more of the time. Now it is getting ability haste, where before it had none. It's having a whopping 70 AD, and for this day and age, that's a shitload of AD. And it's getting less MR, a longer shield, and now you get Omnivamp instead of just lifesteal until you're out of combat when it triggers. So all in all, I'd say it's actually a pretty big buff to an item you don't see a lot.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like the fact that they added Omnivamp. Even though you're probably going to see this on an AD champion more of the time, it's nice that they added like an AP aspect to it. Um,
Well, Omnivamp means it'll work with abilities and auto attacks, whereas Lifesteal would have only been abilities. Or
oh, I
maybe
thought it
auto
was
attacks.
I thought it was AP versus AD. Oh, that's very nice then.
Omnivamp just
Um,
means everything.
wow, that's a huge buff then. I think that the magic reduce to 40 from 50 really isn't gonna be that detrimental if you're adding the 15 ability haste and the 5 AD. So that's pretty awesome. Again, another item I would pick on Vi or another AD carry if I'm going against a lot of AP.
Would you buy this on Fiora, Jade?
Yep, I often do, especially in ARAM if we're going a lot of against a lot of AP champs. It was broke before. Now it's
It was broke before.
yeah. For I felt like it very much helped me.
See, my big
Um,
gripe about I tend to actually I don't think I really ever bought this item before. And
What?
well, the thing my gripe is if I want an MR item, I tend to want to get one that also has health. And I just don't really like the combination of stats on this item. If it was made from like one ruby crystal and gave even just like 200 health or something, I wouldn't mind like picking it up even if they drop the damage a little. But I feel really awkward building items that give armor MR but don't give any HP. I feel like that's kind of feels weird to me.
Yeah, I could kind of agree with you on that. When you're going tank, you want armor, magic res life, right? And then some other stuff. But this is if you're going like more off tank. Again, man, there's not many items for AD that protect you against AP. I mean, AP versus AP, you can always build Banshees or something like that. But yeah, the Maw Malmortius shield is very nice. It can protect you from some AD champs that have magic damage in their kit too.
Yep,
I do think that having the ability haste is necessary.
it's definitely nice.
Yeah.
Cost is a little more, but 300. What? Some boots? I'll take it.
Yep.
Alright. Next up, we've got this change to Spear of Shojin, which was in the game, then it was taken out of the game, now it's back into the game again. And this did function kind of like Conqueror, where it could be abused by some champions whose abilities were coded to trigger things like Conqueror multiple times, kind of like Garen Spin and a few other things I'm not thinking about. But now they're making it this so this is hard coded to only give you one stack per ability.
That's good. That seems kind of like an exploit to me, using it on someone like Garen and getting multiple stacks. I think when the game designers made this, they wanted it to be like that, to where it's just one per cast.
Alright, I haven't actually bought that item very much because it tends to be something I would buy like 5th or 6th if I just happen to be playing like someone who could make use of the movement speed, because now I feel like it's kind of just nice for the huge amount of movement speed it gives you in the late game.
When we do one for all, Johnny always tells me to get Spear of Sojin on Hecarim. I'm like, why? But, it's not that bad. It's a good item.
It's okay. I don't really think about it that much. Alright, next up we've got Sterix, and now it costs 200 more gold, and the passive effect is now on a 30-second longer cooldown, and that's it, no buffs.
Wow.
I thought actually I was
Interesting.
going
Sterix?
to read a buff, but I didn't.
Man, Sterix was already underpowered. Another item I get on Vi, but and Briar, right? Sometimes. Yeah, I don't think that's justified. It's already kind of trash. But I mean, on really heavy HP champs, Sante, stuff like that, that'll help out playing against them anyways.
I like this item, but it definitely doesn't feel like an item that should cost more than 3,000.
Yeah, it's really not that good. But you know, like I said, the shield's really buff, dude. Late game when you have 6,000 HP, right?
It is cool, but I hate that the shield like deteriorates so insanely fast after it triggers. I wish it would at least linger for like a couple seconds before it like deteriorates. I think it starts deteriorating as soon as it triggers. So
Yeah,
you
you
rarely
you
ever get
definitely
like
gotta
the full effect.
you definitely gotta be getting targeted by like 5 people for it to be effective, which is good for Briar, right?
Yeah. She got some serious ARAM nerfs, by the way.
Oh yeah, I'll check them out.
No, it's not this patch, but she was her like incoming healing was like 30% higher in ARAM than in a normal game. And they
Oh
reduced
wow.
that by like 20% or something. So that has something to do with how ridiculously stupid she is in ARAM.
Yep, I know it. I play her in there.
I've seen him playing.
Alright, lastly, we have Sundered Sky, one of the new items that was supposed to fill in for Divine Sunderer after that mythic item did not make a return. And this is a straight up pretty big nerf. This has been one of the more popular items as it's kind of like a Sheen effect, but not really, and it's the only form of sustain that a lot of champions can take now that relied on Divine Sunderer to kind of make a living. Now we got less damage, which is less heal, and now the Sheen effect, pseudo Sheen effect, is now on a longer cooldown.
Ouch. One of
Oh,
one of Briar's go-tos, man. Probably the first item I buy every time. That's gonna hurt her all game long, early, mid, and late. Yeah. I mean, she has other stuff like Spirit Visage and things for sustain, so I don't think it's gonna completely take her out, but that probably will affect a lot of team fights and stuff. As she relies on going from target to target to stay alive.
What do you think, Jade? This has become one of Fiora's go-to items since they took out Divine Sunderer.
I wonder if I. So I think the first time I got this was when I was in a all for one game with Alawi, and it seemed really broke.
Oh yeah, it would be good on her.
So
But just
it's
about
kind of
everything that gives AD is broken on Alawi.
yeah. I guess it's kind of sad for people who like it, who like to use it, but it was pretty broke.
Yeah, you could even take it on J4 and anybody really. That's a shame
Alright,
they
that
nerfed
does it
that.
for all of the items, and there's no runes or mastery changes this patch, so that does it. We're not going to go into
Wow.
all of these insane ARAM arena millions of changes and shit.
You should definitely play an arena though, Chris. At least give it a shot. It's pretty fun.
I might, but I won't.
Oh, that's it.
Yep, that's it for 14.9.
All right, man. Well, thanks for inviting us in, man. It was fun.
I am so glad you guys were able to do this with me.
This was
No problem.
fun.
All right.